Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. Every night, I used to stare at the ceiling, wondering what version of my wife I'd get in the morning. Would she be cold and distant, rolling over with her back to me? Or would she give me just enough kindness to keep me hanging on? The truth is, I begged her for intimacy more times than I care to admit. Not just physical closeness, but any sign that I mattered. A touch, a glance, something real. She rationed it out like oxygen, reminding me without words that she controlled it. At first, I told myself it was stress, maybe hormones, maybe life just getting in the way. But deep down, I knew better. The breaking point didn't come with another night of rejection. It came when she turned to me in the kitchen, almost casually, and asked for money. Not for groceries, not for bills. For herself. Her tone wasn't humble, not even grateful. It was entitled, like I was just an ATM with legs. That was the moment everything inside me flipped. She had said no to me for months, maybe years. But when she wanted something, suddenly I was supposed to be available. Her body wasn't mine anymore. Her heart had vanished long ago. But my wallet, my work, my effort, my hours, those were always fair game. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't even ask what she wanted it for. Instead, I smiled in a way I hadn't in years. Not the smile of a man in love, but the smile of a man who finally understood what game he was in, and who had just decided not to play. She thought I was weak, that I would keep orbiting her world, grateful for crumbs of attention, terrified to lose her. She didn't see the shift. Not yet. That night, I lay beside her in silence. Her scrolling filled the dark, the glow of her phone shining like a wall between us. My mind was racing, but not with pain. With plans. With clarity. I remembered the early days, when she laughed at my dumb jokes and curled into me like I was her home. I remembered the warmth, the partnership, the way she used to look at me. That woman was gone. Replaced by someone who thought intimacy was leverage, not love. I didn't try to hold her anymore. I didn't whisper goodnight. I just let the silence settle, and for the first time in years, it felt like it belonged to me. She thought she'd won by keeping herself out of reach. She didn't realize I had just taken everything back. The next morning, I got up before she did. No coffee for her. No notes. No small gestures. I left the house without saying a word. I sat in my car, hands on the wheel, breathing in the quiet. It felt like freedom. It felt dangerous. Because I knew once I started down this road, there was no turning back. And as I watched the sun rise over the empty streets, I realized something she hadn't figured out yet. She thought she had stripped me of options, but all she'd really done was unlock the one choice she could never control, the moment I decided I was done begging. The strange thing about silence is how quickly it shifts the balance. For years I filled the void between us with effort. I asked questions, made plans, cracked jokes, bought small gifts, carried the weight of our life without asking her to notice. She trained me to believe that if I just tried harder, maybe she'd come back to me. But the moment I stopped, something shifted in the air. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, like the first breeze before a storm. At breakfast, I sat across from her, scrolling through the news on my phone. No small talk. No familiar morning routine. She made herself a coffee and waited for me to notice the robe she was wearing, the way her hair fell over her shoulder. I didn't lift my eyes. She asked if I wanted eggs. I nodded once, ate them quietly, and left the table without a word. She kept watching me, her expression tight, as if she couldn't figure out what was missing. That night, I came home later than usual. I'd gone to the gym, something I hadn't done in years. I wasn't chasing revenge, I just needed to feel my own body again. She was sitting on the couch when I walked in, dressed in a satin robe, a half-finished glass of wine next to her. The TV was paused like she had staged the room. She looked at me and said I was late. I replied calmly that I didn't realize we were keeping track. Her eyes flickered in surprise. I cleaned the kitchen without complaint, without explanation, without the slightest attempt to close the distance between us. When she asked if I was okay, I answered, better than I've been in a long time. And I meant it. She tried harder the next day. Dinner on the table, candles lit, a smile that looked rehearsed. I thanked her, ate in silence, and when her fingers brushed mine across the table, I pulled my hand back as if I hadn't even noticed. That small gesture broke something in her. She froze for a second, then looked away, pretending it didn't matter. But I saw it. The crack in her mask. The beginning of panic. She had built her identity around control, withholding affection when it suited her, deciding when and if I was allowed to feel close to her. She believed I would always keep trying, always keep begging. But now she was the one waiting, and I was no longer playing. The power she had clung to was slipping from her hands. I watched her carefully, not with longing, but with detachment. She didn't realize it yet, but I was already gone. My body might have been sitting across from her, but my mind was building a future without her in it. A future where I didn't need to ask for permission just to feel human. And the more she noticed, the more the silence between us became unbearable, not for me, but for her. I knew the exact moment she started to unravel. It wasn't dramatic. There were no tears or screaming matches. It was quiet, subtle, but unmistakable. She called me at work in the middle of the day. She never did that. Her voice sounded light, too careful, like she was forcing it. She said she just wanted to hear my voice. I let the silence stretch until she filled it with a nervous laugh, then told me she'd let me get back to work. That's when I knew it wasn't affection. It was fear. Fear of losing control over something she thought she owned. That night, I came home late again. Deliberately. She was waiting in the living room, dressed like we had plans to go out. We didn't. She mentioned a new restaurant she wanted to try, her words quick and rehearsed, like she was auditioning for forgiveness. I told her I had already eaten and walked upstairs. The pause that followed told me everything. For the first time, she wasn't the one rejecting me. I was rejecting her. 2 days later, I began rerouting my paycheck into a private account. Clean, discreet, untouchable. She had no idea. I canceled streaming services she used daily, subscriptions she never noticed I paid for. That night she called from the living room, saying something was wrong with Netflix. I didn't answer. She waited, expecting me to fix it like I always did. I didn't move. That was the beginning of the unraveling, brick by brick, tearing down the castle she had built on convenience. I started going to the gym more often, sometimes staying out late without explanation. She asked who I was with. I said simply, just people. That word landed harder than I expected, not because of what it meant, but because of what it didn't. I wasn't orbiting around her anymore, and that silence, that ambiguity, was crushing her. A week later, I caught her folding my laundry, something she hadn't done in years. Her eyes lingered on the receipts in my pockets, her hands trembling just enough to give her away. She was looking for evidence, desperate for confirmation of a story she had created in her head. I let her wonder. I didn't flinch. I wasn't cheating. I wasn't chasing someone else. I was just living again. And that was more dangerous to her than any affair could ever be. Because if I wasn't chasing her, if I wasn't begging, then she no longer had a role to play. She had mistaken devotion for dependence, and now she was facing a man who didn't need her approval to breathe. And in the quiet, she finally began to feel it, the loss. Not because I shouted, not because I fought, but because I had stopped waiting. And nothing unsettles someone who craves control more than realizing their silence has been turned against them. The first time I saw her panic for real was a Tuesday night. I walked into the house after a late workout and found the kitchen spotless, candles burning, and music playing softly through the speakers. She had cooked a full meal, the kind she hadn't made in months, maybe years. Plates were set, wine poured, like she was trying to rewind time. She stood by the sink, waiting for me to notice. I sat down, poured myself a glass of water, and started eating without a word. She lingered in the doorway, arms crossed, her voice strained when she asked if I was really not going to talk to her. I looked up and said, "What do you want me to say?" The question froze her in place. She wasn't expecting it. She was expecting a fight, something she could push against. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. That same week, she started sending texts in the middle of the day. Little things like, "Hope your morning's good," or "What do you want for dinner?" At first I responded politely. Short, clipped answers. "Thanks. Doesn't matter. All good." Each reply was like a scalpel, cutting away the illusion she had built. For years she had told herself I was the needy one, desperate for her attention. Now I was the one choosing silence, and she had no defense against it. One evening, I came home to find her waiting in the living room with 2 glasses of wine. She smiled, too wide, too forced, and said we should relax together, just like old times. I glanced at the wine, then at her, and walked upstairs without touching it. I heard the quiet clink of glass against the table as she set it down. She sat there alone that night, two untouched drinks between her and the reality she didn't want to face. The irony was sharp. She used to tell me I was too sensitive, too emotional, too demanding of closeness. But now that I wasn't asking, now that I was moving like a shadow through our home, she was the one desperate for a reaction. Every gesture, every attempt, every staged moment was her trying to claw back control. But I had already taken it from her in the simplest way possible. I had stopped caring. And that was the part she didn't understand. Silence isn't empty. Silence is heavy. Silence can suffocate louder than any fight. For the first time, she was the one gasping for air, while I was breathing easier than I had in years. She thought she still had time to fix it, to pull me back into orbit. She didn't realize I had already begun preparing for the moment she would see the truth, that she wasn't losing me. She had already lost me. 3 weeks after I stopped begging, the mask slipped completely. I noticed it one night when her phone lit up on the counter while she was in the bathroom. A preview flashed across the screen, a single message that read, "Tonight was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." The sender's name was nothing but a single letter. My heartbeat didn't spike. There was no shock, no rage. Deep down, I already knew. This wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was confirmation. She came out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her hair, humming as if life was perfectly normal. She didn't notice I had seen it, and I didn't say a word. That silence was more powerful than any confrontation could have been. I lay in bed that night with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her typing quietly on her phone beside me. I realized I wasn't lying next to a wife anymore. I was lying next to a stranger. The next morning, she asked if I could transfer some money. Her tone was casual, like it was her right, like she had forgotten she'd denied me everything else, but never hesitated to take what she wanted. I smiled, nodded, and told her I'd take care of it. But instead of sending it, I moved more of our money into the private account she didn't know existed. I had already started preparing for the separation she didn't see coming. This was just the next step. Over the following days, she became restless. The confident woman who once rolled her eyes at me was now hovering in doorways, studying me, trying to guess what I was thinking. She started wearing perfume again, slipping into dresses she hadn't touched in years, lingering in front of the mirror before I came home. But her timing was off. She didn't realize that I wasn't blind. I had already connected the dots between her sudden effort and the nights she claimed she was working late. I watched her try to act normal. I watched her cook dinners she didn't eat, start conversations she didn't finish, leave her phone face down like it was an accident. She was unraveling, but I stayed steady, calm, untouchable. The silence wasn't punishment, it was freedom. Every move I made was calculated, deliberate, pulling myself further away from her while she flailed in the emptiness she had created. The irony was brutal. She thought she could have everything, her secret life, her lover, and me as her loyal backup plan. But I wasn't her backup anymore. I was already gone in every way that mattered. And she was about to learn what it felt like when the man she thought would never leave not only walks away, but makes sure she has nothing left to hold on to. The real shift came when she realized I wasn't angry. Anger would have been easier for her. If I had yelled, accused, demanded answers, she could have played the victim, twisted the story, painted herself as misunderstood. But I gave her nothing. My silence was too steady, too calm, and it terrified her. She started watching me like a hawk, waiting for an explosion that never came. One evening, she walked into the kitchen as I was cleaning up after myself. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, trying to sound casual as she asked where I had been spending my nights. I told her simply that I'd been out. Her eyes narrowed, but I didn't elaborate. She asked with who. I answered with one word, people. The silence that followed was heavier than any fight we'd ever had. She wanted details, something to latch onto, but I refused to give her the satisfaction. Later that night, I caught her pacing in the living room, phone in her hand, typing furiously and then deleting. She didn't see me watching from the stairs. She was unraveling in real time, trying to figure out whether I knew, whether I cared, whether her grip on me was already gone. The truth was simpler. I had already detached. The only thing left was execution. That week I started stripping away her comforts piece by piece. The shared subscriptions, gone. The automatic payments, canceled. Her favorite online deliveries never showed up. She complained once, asking if I had forgotten to update something. I just shrugged, as if it didn't matter. That shrug said more than words ever could. She began to test me in small ways. Suddenly, she was curious about my phone, asking who I was texting, pretending to tidy up near my laptop. She'd dress up for no reason, linger in the bedroom doorway like she expected me to notice. I didn't. My indifference became her obsession. The same woman who once dismissed my affection now desperately searched for it in the cracks of my silence. The cruelest part for her was that I wasn't punishing her. I wasn't even trying to make her jealous. I had simply stopped playing the role she had written for me. And once I stepped out of it, she had no script left. I lay in bed one night, listening to her breathing unevenly beside me. She wasn't asleep. She was waiting for me to say something. Anything. I didn't. My silence filled the room, pressing down on her until she finally turned away. That was the moment I understood. She wasn't afraid of losing me to someone else. She was afraid of losing me to nothing, to the quiet, to the absence. And she had no idea that I was already preparing to leave her with exactly that. By the fourth week, the silence had turned into something she couldn't escape. I could see it in the way she moved around the house. She used to glide with confidence, every step like she owned the space, owned me. Now she was tentative, almost cautious, like she was walking through a stranger's home. She tried to reclaim the old rhythm by asking me small questions at dinner, forcing laughter at nothing, offering me glasses of wine I never touched. I gave her politeness, but nothing more. And that absence, that wall of indifference, was breaking her faster than any argument ever could. The cracks showed most clearly when her sister came over. I was in the kitchen when I heard them talking in the living room. Her sister's voice was sharp, asking what was going on with us. My wife lowered her tone, but I caught the words, "He's distant, cold. It's like he doesn't even care anymore." The irony nearly made me laugh. She had spent years telling me I was too sensitive, too needy, too emotional. Now she was unraveling because I had stopped caring. I stayed quiet in the kitchen, letting her tell on herself. I didn't need to defend my absence. She was doing it for me. That night, she climbed into bed and reached for my arm, something she hadn't done in months. I stayed still, my eyes closed, as if I hadn't noticed. Her hand lingered, then pulled back like she'd touched fire. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, unbearable for her. For me, it was freedom. By then, I had already made my preparations. The private account was growing. Documents were gathered quietly, hidden in a folder she would never look for. I had spoken to a lawyer under the guise of a work meeting. Every piece of the puzzle was falling into place, one quiet move at a time. She thought she still had control, that with enough effort she could pull me back. She didn't realize she wasn't dealing with the same man anymore. The next morning, she tried one last tactic. She put on a dress I hadn't seen in years, stood in the doorway sipping coffee, and asked if I still found her attractive. I looked at her for a moment, then simply said, "You'll figure that out," and walked away. Her face fell, but she didn't follow. She couldn't. She was trapped in the silence she had created, drowning in the absence she once believed was power. And as I drove away that morning, I realized something final had shifted. She thought the distance between us was temporary, a phase, something she could fix with enough charm. She didn't understand that I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't pausing. I was already gone, and the only thing left was to let her discover it too late. The night everything came into focus was the night she slept. She had gone to bed early, leaving her phone charging on the counter. For months, she had been careful, screen face down, notifications hidden, always one step ahead. But that night, the screen lit up while I was putting away dishes. A message previewed, short and unmistakable. "Miss you already." That was all I needed. I didn't open it. I didn't confront her. I just looked at those words glowing in the dark kitchen and felt a calm certainty settle over me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't heartbreak. It was confirmation of what I had already known. She wasn't mine anymore, and I no longer wanted her to be. I went upstairs and lay down beside her, the blue light from her phone still glowing in my mind. She was breathing evenly, pretending to be asleep, while I stared at the ceiling with a stillness she would never understand. I thought about all the nights I had begged for closeness, the way she rationed her affection, The way she believed she could keep me chained with silence while she gave herself away to someone else. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt free. The next morning, she tried to play normal. She asked if I could transfer money for her. Her tone practiced, almost casual. I smiled and told her I'd handle it. Instead, I moved even more into the account she couldn't touch. Piece by piece, I was dismantling the illusion she had built. She thought I was still orbiting her world, blind to the truth. She didn't realize I was already planning the exit she would never see coming. That week, her desperation became impossible to hide. She lingered in the kitchen when I made coffee, searching for a spark in my eyes. She tried to touch my shoulder when she passed me, waiting for a reaction. I gave her nothing. She grew restless, pacing at night, leaving her wine untouched, staring at me like she was trying to decode a language she had never learned. She didn't understand that silence had become my weapon and indifference my shield. One evening, she cracked. She stood in front of me, arms trembling, and asked if I still loved her. I looked at her for a long moment before answering. Love isn't the word I'd use anymore. Then I turned and walked away. Her silence after that wasn't the silence of control. It was the silence of defeat. She finally felt what I had lived in for years, the emptiness of reaching out and finding nothing. And the difference was, I had already learned to live in it. She was just beginning to drown. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It didn't happen in a fight or a confession. It happened in silence, like everything else between us lately. She walked into the living room one evening, dressed in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her hair done, makeup perfect, a dress that once would have stolen my attention. She stood there, waiting for me to react. I didn't. I kept scrolling through my phone, calm, detached. After a long pause, she asked if I wanted to go out, maybe have dinner together, maybe try to reconnect. I said no, not tonight. My tone wasn't harsh, just final. I could see her chest rise and fall, a flicker of panic in her eyes before she turned away. She was finally realizing she wasn't losing me in the future. She had already lost me. That week, I started moving the last of my things. Not in one dramatic sweep, but in small, calculated steps. A box of important documents went into my car. Clothes I didn't wear often disappeared from the closet. She didn't notice at first. She was too busy pretending everything was fine, too busy convincing herself that I was just moody, that she still had time to pull me back. But every quiet move I made was another thread cut, another piece of our life I had already claimed as mine. Her behavior grew erratic. One night she hovered in the kitchen, her phone in her hand, asking strange questions about my day, about where I'd been, about who I was talking to. Her voice was sharp but unsteady, as if she was trying to trap me in a lie. I didn't take the bait. I told her I'd been exactly where I wanted to be. That was enough. She didn't ask again. The cruel part for her was that she finally started trying. She cooked dinners I didn't eat. She poured wine I didn't drink. She laughed at things that weren't funny. But it was too late. She had spent years rationing affection like it was a privilege I had to earn, and now, when she was desperate to give it, I had no interest in taking it. I slept easily that week for the first time in years. Not because everything was fixed, but because everything was clear. The begging was over. The waiting was over. I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was free. And she was trapped in the silence she had built, staring at a man who no longer looked at her with longing, but with distance. She thought intimacy was hers to grant. She never imagined I'd be the one to take everything back, piece by piece, until there was nothing left of us except her realization that she had pushed me away for good. The final act came without fireworks. No shouting, no accusations, no begging. Just quiet, deliberate closure. I had prepared for weeks, lining up every detail, every safeguard. The private account was secured, the paperwork ready, the lawyer waiting. All that was left was execution. She didn't see it coming, because she was still trapped in her fantasy that I would wait, that I would give her time to decide who she wanted to be. But I had already decided who I was without her. That morning, I left before she woke up. I didn't leave a note, didn't leave a trace. The house was still, my side of the closet half empty, drawers cleared of anything important. I drove across town to the new apartment I had already furnished. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Mine without compromise, without conditions, without her. Sitting there in the quiet, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. When she finally called, hours later, Her voice was sharp with panic. She asked where I was, why some of my things were gone, why the account balances didn't match what she expected. I listened in silence, then ended the call without a word. That silence was my answer. She tried again, text after text, each one shorter, more frantic. But the truth was clear. She wasn't reaching me anymore. She was reaching into emptiness. Later that evening, I knew she would find the papers. They were waiting for her on the kitchen table, neatly stacked, already signed on my end. Divorce, final and clean. No threats, no second chances. Just a line for her signature. The same table where she once asked me for money with a careless tone now held the reality she couldn't escape. She wanted distance. Now she had it. She wanted freedom. It was hers. But she would face it without the safety net she assumed I would always provide. That night, as I sat in my new apartment with the city lights outside my window, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, weightless. I didn't hate her. I didn't need revenge. The silence had done all the work for me. She would sit in that house, surrounded by the absence of everything she once took for granted, and realize the truth. She hadn't just lost my affection. She had lost me. And the final thought that drifted through my mind, calm and certain, was this. She believed intimacy was a gift she could withhold, that she had the power to decide when I was worthy of it. But in the end, she learned the hardest lesson of all. You can starve a man of love, but once he learns to live without you, there's no hunger left. Just silence. And that silence is forever. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.